All right, we are live and we are talking about some extremely weak solar activity. But first, we're going on camera. So if you're seeing us go live right now, folks, please share on your social media and join us in our new smAsho studio, where you see who knows what. First thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit about how the channel formed in the first place. That's right. So the channel formed because I found myself looking up certain space weather information every day and not finding it anyplace. So I figured I would share with friends, family, and the rest of the world what data I was looking at, as I found some disparities between what other folks were covering and what we cover on our channel. So that's part of the purpose of it. And yeah, so the channel's grown unexpectedly, and once again, responsibilities fall into one's lap. Perhaps we don't ask for responsibility. Responsibility finds us when it's required. So anyway, due to the data rundowns I was doing for myself every day, I figured I would make them public. And that way it's easier for me to access my own videos too. So I'm not only the smAsho president, but I'm also a client. So anyway, let's get to the current space weather stuff, as we are trying to keep these videos from being like an hour long each. So let's switch to screen share here as I play up some tracks. Here's Gem Cutter, and bear with me while I get everything situated. That's right, Epic Pen is back, folks. Epic Pen is back. We're going to let Gem Cutter play out for 1 minute as the view at 193 angstroms plays of your local yellow dwarf. All right, everything looks like it's in order, folks. So let's get into the data about the sun being at an incredibly weak state. 68 solar flux units is a 10.7 centimeter radial flux. We do see a little shrinkage of the North Pole coronal hole. We're going to look for crown prominences in a minute. South Pole coronal hole is looking large and in charge, which it is of the magnetic environment. Let's check out the 304 angstroms. And I want to go from this to something else immediately, the synoptic map. Now, first of all, we saw crown prominences up here yesterday, a sign that North Pole activity is going to increase, is currently increasing rather. Not quite the same thing going on the South Pole. Now we do have a towering filament over here. This thing is about 2 or 3 Earths in diameter. Now, I want to go from the 304 angstrom view, which shows you plasma filaments like this one, straight to solar ham, because solar ham has a link directly to, well, not directly to, but if you click on details right here, You'll see the synoptic map. And once again, we are a little ahead of the curve here. So that filament here on the southwest portion of the sun, where that magnifying glass is and where you see that circle, that's what we're looking at. That's something interesting to watch, as we'll be interested to see if that gets ejected throughout the day. All right, so let's go back to where we were here, so we don't lose our place. And let's go to 171 angstroms here. I just clicked on the wrong day. All right, there we go. We're up to 6 hours and 45 minutes, and we should see the setting of sunspot 2741 as the main feature in this view. You should see a nice fountain there on the west, and indeed you do. So there's that view. Try to get this zoomed out correctly. There we go. Shrink that frame down. And there's the full res view. All right, let's move on here. We do see coronal holes in the southern portion there a bit, and we do see some fleeting type of connections here. These are the type of magnetic connections that cause earthquakes. See these little pulses in here. Those are associated with very low solar activity and coronal holes, folks. So be on the lookout. We see some phi angle slippage here, and so that's something to keep an eye on. It looks like the total field strength is going up right now, as we typically see at solar minimum. So very weak solar conditions here. The solar wind densities drop down to about 8, and the solar wind speeds at about 385, 390 kilometers per second. So super weak activity. And I clicked the wrong thing. All right. Next, we'll look at magnetosphere movies. There's the velocity. University of Michigan, I recommend a speed up button and a slow down button for these movies, so we can get through them a little faster. Here's the density. And it looks like missing data on the density. What is up with that? It's just showing one frame there. Let's try to refresh the page. Odd. Okay. It looks legit. There we go. So there's the density. Keep in mind the blue is the high density and the white is the low density. Eight protons per cubic centimeter. The current solar wind density is a little bit above what you'd call solar minimum solar wind levels. There is some activity there, and we see that reflected in the pressure also, as we see fairly even pressure around the planet. The Van Allen belts are looking fairly symmetrical here, and the best spot to view those would be on the moon-midnight meridional plane view, which is the pane on your right. Fairly even, steady solar wind producing that situation. And to tell you the truth, we just got pummeled by thunderstorms. We'll show you the system in a minute, actually in several minutes, as that's toward the end of the video. So if you're interested in meteorology stuff, stay tuned as we look at ground magnetic perturbations, also courtesy of the University of Michigan Geospace Model V1.5. space weather modeling framework. And we do see some significant perturbations here, especially over the South Pole. We see some jumping around of the fields essentially right here. Let's replay this section. Sudden perturbations there. And that's the kind of thing that you would see with the sudden switches in the BTBZ. Timestamps look legit, so that does not look like anomalous data. Here's a view over the globe. And we've got Epic Pen back. We've got a North Pole and another North Pole. And if you're south of that, your compass points to here. And the South Pole is going like this, folks. It's a little bit disturbing. And we see some very anomalous pulses coming down here across Africa and South America. Never seen that before. And let's rock this back and forth for a minute. Some very anomalous magnetic pulses there measured over South America, as well as going right across from Gibraltar, across Africa, into the Pacific Ocean. Some perturbations based on Hawaii and the standard Southern Indian Ocean. Also an area just popping out right here. All right, let's move on here. Look at the total electron content before we even go to the data pages. We are not railroaded to do any type of videos on this channel, folks. So we will continue to do anything in any order. We will not limit our thinking in any way. So electron flux is looking low. Let's move on. Let's look at the Enlil spiral. We haven't for a couple days on this channel, so let's look at that on the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. And the prediction is for very weak activity, as you can see, for a solid week. Or the better part of one. All right, let's move on. Please visit the links in the description below the video. Support the channel in any way you see fit, as our mission is to assist, study, and report on the ongoing formation of a unified theory of physics, to raise the awareness of the general public of the relationship between space weather and Earth effects. Your Earth effects come from space, folks. Earth lives in space. To connect and consult with media organizations to multiply our reach, which is the toughest part of our mission and why we need to spend more time doing it and probably have to go full time. To demonstrate cutting-edge proof of concept solution to problems like the tomatoes we grew over the winter indoors, and so on. Plants of opportunity. To publish scientific papers in a multidisciplinary manner, including but not limited to sciences such as spectroscopy, chemistry, astrophysics, health, wellness, longevity, cosmology, biology, magnetohydrodynamics, geology, etc. To assist mankind by advancing the study of predictive phenomena in order to optimize value, reduce risk and liability, save lives and resources, and adapt no matter what the adversity is. And lastly, to not be ossified in our beliefs and to treat those who are with love, respect, and inclusion to the scientific discussion. So, help us out on Patreon if able. One time or recurring donations also available at PayPal. Links in the description. Also, check out our sponsor shop. We are about to invest in a new, I am about to invest in a new road bike and getting back into bike racing, folks. So if you want to support that, we've already got the time trial bike is already ready to go. All I need is a license and to pin some numbers. And we're looking at by June, we're looking by the first day of summer to have this in the arsenal. So this will significantly increase the amount of mileage I'm able to do, and will save me a ton of energy with a carbon fiber wheel set and so on. So anyway, support us in any possible way you can in the links and descriptions. And we will break out the purple pen when we need to. Let's look at the LASCO images. Nothing really noteworthy here. Actually, there was a little bit of ejecta there on the 18th, which will totally miss the Earth to the west. And yeah, so not too exciting there. I would note 10.7 centimeter radial flux is all the way down to 68, folks. So this is going to be updated at some point today and getting closer to the solar minimum predicted values here. Now, I don't know why they're predicting activity to be this low in, the years 20 in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. I don't know what they're talking about with that. I don't know how that's a predicted value, but anyway. Anyway, there's that coronal hole we were looking at in 193 angstroms. Keep in mind the solar wind comes out of these coronal holes in an angular fashion, not straight out. And that's due to stuff that we're not going to get into in this video. Because if we don't have Robitaille here to really explain it, we're not going to talk about things like measuring the temperature of the sun from the Earth and other hilarities of astrophysics. So let's go to spaceweathernews.com. Let's look at stuff like the X-ray flux, which is totally flatlined. We see perturbations in the magnetometer. And I believe that's because of a coronal hole wind stream, which is a weak one. And the KP is only at 2 as a result. So slightly elevated solar wind there, but overall the activity of the sun's super weak. And we do see a very low electron flux here. So once again, the electron content data coincides with the electron flux, and we like to see that. The F2 layer is looking very discharged on the sun-facing side. If you want to monitor that throughout the day, folks, be my guest. This thing updates very quickly. I don't know exactly how often. It doesn't really say there, but if you click on this and you hit refresh, it's probably like by the minute or something like that. So anyway, let's continue on here, because there's plenty more stuff to cover. We're going to look at transients and all kinds of interesting things. So here's the Gong 2. Let's take a look at this. Plasma should be bunched up in between the Earth and the sun, and indeed we see that. This area right here, you can see the plasma is kind of bunchy there, and that's what you would expect to see. And as we cross into these straighter field lines here, you're going to see continued magnetometer spikes, and then it should weaken as we get to these more bunched up areas over here. Typically what happens with that, so this is 1 hour and 56 minutes old, and you should be able to corroborate this data and the GOES magnetometers. Let's head out to Stereo A space weather beacon. Look at the coronagraph out there. We don't expect to see too much, but you got to look. If you don't look, you won't see stuff. This morning, I saw lightning, and I woke up at about midnight, and I couldn't go back to sleep due to thunderstorm after thunderstorm wreaking havoc. Hopefully it didn't mess up the Asiatic lilies I planted yesterday, as the girlfriend's allergies are too harsh to plant flowers at this time of year. Anyway, there are some random oddities here, but no kind of Earth-facing coronal mass ejections. There is a bit of a plasma projection there, and that's something to watch throughout the day. If you're wondering where the planets and sun are located, this site is not telling you because it's got the sun and Mercury's orbit, and it's missing other planets. And wow, how about the desktop version, folks? Let's hope the sun is not in between Mercury and Venus's orbit. That's not really what we want to see. Anyway, there's a location of your planets. This site's been having some issues the past couple days. Yeah, I'm not touching that. Anyway, that's where stuff's located. Earth is creeping up on Jupiter, and there should be some great imagery coming out of the largest gas giant in our solar system. And if you got a backyard telescope, break it out. The moon's waning. Just thought you'd like to know. So again, if you get up before dawn, you should be able to see Jupiter and Saturn out there. And now that it's post full moon, the moon will be setting at a little later time. So should be a interesting time to view the ecliptic. A lot of bright objects out there. Follow us on Twitter, as we have an account there to help our folks share our videos with Twitter users. Also on Facebook. And those two places will censor you. So be careful. We're not fans of the platforms. However, we use them to get the word out. Also follow us on minds.com/smAsho, the social media that will not censor you, and you can even earn Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency. So if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. As we transition into the world of earthquakes, which scare the crap out of me, and even though I've been in many, I've never actually felt one, which makes it even weirder and scarier. So we see a 4.4 in Indonesia. We see a 4.4 in Indonesia. Is there an echo in here? 3.3 in California. And what is this? We saw one yesterday, too, that we failed to cover. A 3.8 in Trinidad, Colorado. Shout out Coloradans. Let us know if you felt that 3.8. Pretty large quake there. All right, so we see a 5.1. South Sandwich Islands, very far south, used to be rare. Now it happens about once a month. Here's a 5.9 New Caledonia. As we've seen an uptick all around the area north of Australia there, Papua New Guinea and so on. Here's a 4.5 at Japan. Here's a 6.2 at New Caledonia. 4.9 New Caledonia. 4.6 at Argentina. We've been seeing deep quakes there. Heads up. Shout out to South American viewers. Seeing deep quakes there for the last couple of days. So beware and have an earthquake plan if you live in areas like that. Or like this. Because there's still a large earthquake drought really going on. So be prepared, be an asset, not a liability when buildings start to fall. And be prepared for which ones will fall. Since you can, you should. Another deep quake right in the same place at Chile. 4.9 in Russia, east of Kamchatka. 4.6 off the coast of Central America. Here's a deep quake at Fiji. Whoops, 4.3 at Mexico. And then a nearly 400-kilometer deep quake at Fiji. Shout out Fijians if you watch the videos. Please leave a comment. Middle East earthquakes continue. Here's another one taking place in Afghanistan. Probably big enough to do a little bit of damage. Let us know if you're in Afghanistan and you saw a bunch of cups fall off the wall or something. If you saw pictures vibrate, leave a comment. Here's a 5.0 in Papua New Guinea. As there's been a huge uptick there, we hope they're doing okay, as that's the most recent 7+. 4.7 at Papua New Guinea, right in that same location. Basically an aftershock, I suppose. 5.0 in Tonga, and a 5.1 in Papua New Guinea. So let us know if you live in Papua New Guinea and you're seeing an uptick in quakes, because frankly, I want to go on vacation to an earthquake-prone area and experience one, because it freaks me out. Anyway, here's the pressure map. Let's just let this advance for a minute and see where things will be in a couple of days. If you're in an earthquake region, just watch the video play. As we get into late today, see a low pressure approaching Washington. So places like Vancouver and Oregon could experience an earthquake as a result of that. If you're not familiar with earthquake forecasting, please check out QuakeWatch.net by Ben Davidson. There's a whole technique using the very instruments that I have displayed on your screen to predict earthquakes. Please learn it, especially if you live in an earthquake-prone area. As if you're watching this video, you have the internet, which means you have access to all of the data required to make the predictions. Anyway, we're going to pause that at Thursday, bring it back to the current situation, and then we're going to switch the view to crowd favorite, snow depth. Snow depth. So what's the date today, folks? What's the date? Is it May 20th? Does that globe look warm to you? Volcano rundown. Volcanoes today include Abico, producing a 12,000-foot ash plume. Tucono, producing a 7,000-foot ash plume. Fuego, emissions have dissipated. Revenador, ongoing volcanic emissions. Sabancaya, producing a 24,000-foot plume. Please don't fly a trapeze over Sabancaya. It would be unhealthful, although quite a spectacle. And don't make a testicle of yourself while making a spectacle of yourself. U.S. Doppler radar map shows more snow over the Rockies. And we just got pummeled in Pennsylvania with heavy storms that trained on us. So thunderstorm after thunderstorm hit us. Let's see if we can still show you that stuff as we zoom in on what's going on over my head. And as long as we don't have a power outage, we should be able to continue on with the live stream. So anyway, I'm located in this area here, the Lehigh Valley, and I'm not exactly where that pin is, so don't try to stalk me. You won't find me. I will be invisible. Let's zoom back out here because I want to see something going on in Wyoming. And what's going on is, I mean, lots of snow. It looks like heavy snow. I see some heavy bands there. Please zoom in. I don't know how many times I got to click it, but click it or ticket, folks. Pro driving tip. wear your seatbelt, and don't be a hack looking at your phone instead of looking at the road. Check out the freaking snowstorms. They got wintry mix. Could be some thunder snow falling there. Shout out to Wyoming. Goodness gracious. Some slushy mix falling there in Idaho also. Ouch. Also Colorado. Holla. All right, let's look at some other maps here and keep this thing moving, as stagnation is death. So those thunderstorms that just hit us about 2 hours ago are finally moving off, and they are hauling ass up to all the way up in Onesta, New York already. So stagnating up in the Adirondacks, it looks like. Or are those the Catskills? I don't know. I only know the finger. I don't care. My geography is mediocre on my best day. Check out the water vapor map here real quick, as we are almost through with the stream. And you will work. You will work. Anyway, there's the water vapor situation. We're just going to zoom in one time real quick on my location, as I usually look where the action is, and for once it's over my head. Or it's just gone over my head. Don't let the jokes go over your head, folks. See, now that's what we call a segue. When it comes to public speaking or showbiz or broadcasting or journalism, we call that a segue. Not to be confused with those crappy gyroscope scooters, which are vastly inferior to a bicycle, the most efficient means ever devised to transport humans. Can I repeat that? I guess I should repeat that. The bicycle is the most efficient means ever derived to transport humans. More efficient than horses or cars or trains or rockets or unicycles. All right, let's move on. Since solar activity is so low, let's look at Athens' cosmic ray monitor. Again, 68 is the 10.7 centimeter radio flux right now, folks. 68. It was up around 80 for a while there. Here's Moscow. Small uptick there at Moscow in the past day or two. Here's Oulu. Here's DOMC Antarctica. And here's DOMB Antarctica. So similar upticks at those spots too. Let's look at Apatit and Barentsburg. There's Apatit. And there's Barentsburg. Nothing to write home about. We're going to start getting to even more spaced out stuff than cosmic rays. But first, we're going to see how hot the Arctic is. And sea ice looks like it's leveling out there. It was dropping down fast, and now it's not. Now, yesterday and the day before we defined
imbecile.
Yesterday, we defined
claptrap.
Today, we're going to define cretin.
Cretin.
It would be logical to call your local politician a
cretin,
depending on how stupid he is. Now, often considered offensive, one affected or afflicted, rather, with cretinism. Now, it used to say a specific type of moron from the Alps, and I'm sure you could still find that definition of
cretin.
But anyway, cretin. Thanks m.w.com, Merriam-Webster, for providing us with these definitions of words like cretin. So I would, if you are a cretin, I would recommend that you perhaps get your head out of your you-know-what, and perhaps enroll in the Bernie Sanders School of Economics, which, as you can see, is a giant empty outhouse behind a wall that says Bernie Sanders School of Economics. Since less deodorant choices are the effect of socialism, not the goal of it. Here's the cart, here's the horse. Please deposit socialist ideas in the classroom. Next, we're going to look at transients. We'll leave links in the description if you want to know what's going on with certain objects, such as your galactic core, known as Sagittarius A star. Just head to this page, and here are the transients. We see a huge downtick in activity from the core. Right here, the last few days, super low. Let's look at Cygnus X1, something on the stellar scale, widely believed to be a, quote, black hole, end quote. And I won't get into why I'm putting the word black hole in quotes. There is a reason. And let's see. We're at a low level of activity for X1 also. Note the blue graph, less transients on the Burst Alert telescope. Next, we're going to look at Cygnus X3, my personal cosmic ray favorite, one of the most reliable sources, otherwise known as Deneb. I believe I need a dash. There we go. Cygnus X3. Here's the transients from this. And we see a similar downtick. Now, do we see a proportional change in the activity out of Sagittarius A star and objects in the Cygnus constellation? Yeah. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. Is it a coincidence? No, it's not. And this is the basis of the main scientific paper we're going to write this year. Let's also look at another provider of an incredible amount of radiation, Cygnus A. A radio galaxy hundreds of millions of light years away, which just happens to be the second strongest radio source in the entire sky, second only to the local yellow dwarf known as the Sun. So there's Cygnus A, massive radio galaxy. And we see a similar trend in activity from it. I'm just going to leave that on the screen for a minute so you folks can let that sink in if you haven't watched any of my other cosmology pieces. Perhaps you should. We're going to make specific videos about it eventually, but and let's see, what else can we look at here? Let's look at the Vela pulsar, which is at a different place. Vela pulsar is not located towards Cygnus. And oh, we saw a massive uptick. Look at the transients there around day 132. Check it out. Shout out cosmology, people. In fact, Eugene Bagashov, you're getting a phone call today. Check it out, man. This is serious stuff, folks. And we're not going to say anything else about it because a little too serious. Thanks for joining, folks. Yes, Eric Rader, it has to do with the solar minimum, although I try to keep the word grand out of my mouth because not all of us anticipate this cycle to be the grand minimum. So we don't want to exaggerate or place any ideas that we don't deem as true in people's heads. Let me blow this up a little bit so I can read it. Oh my gosh, will you work? Hey software, please function. Jeez. There we go. I think that's a little better. Anyway, thanks for joining us, folks. It is about time to be out of here. We're looking at 7.5 hours approximately of solar activity in the 94 angstroms band. I would note that there is an active region forming right here. It's a plage that we looked at yesterday, so that's something to keep your eye on throughout the day. And when I say eye on, the pun was intentional. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, folks. Thanks, donors especially. You're making a huge difference in our operation, and the increasing in the complexity is to continue. So it's about that time. And we're going to put up one more view here as a bonus. How about the colored magnetogram? We are waiting to see reverse polarity objects, folks, as that is a blank disk. So thanks for tuning in. Remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink it. If you drink, stare at the sun anyway. Just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent.